The transport ship broke through the clouds of 7, and Commander pressed his face against the viewport like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below him stretched a world of fire and shadow. Rivers of molten rock cut through black stone plains. Mountains belched smoke into a sky the color of dried blood. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. Had spent 3 months preparing for this assignment. He had learned the draconian language until his throat ached from the harsh sounds. He had memorized their customs, their history, their 700 forms of formal greeting. The diplomatic corps had told him this was the most important posting of his career, a liaison officer to the Draconian Empire, a bridge between two species who had only recently stopped trying to kill each other. What they had not told him was the truth. The shuttle landed on a platform of polished obsidian. Heat washed over as the doors opened, and he was grateful for the cooling systems built into his uniform. A delegation of Draconians waited for him. They stood 3 meters tall, their scales gleaming in shades of red and orange and gold. Their wings were folded against their backs like cloaks made of leather and bone. Their eyes, slit-pupilled and ancient, watched him with expressions he could not read. The leader of the delegation stepped forward. His scales were the deep red of cooling magma, and golden rings pierced the ridges above his eyes. "Commander," the Draconian said, his voice like grinding stones, "I am Lord of the Fire Caste. We welcome you to 7. Performed the formal bow he had practiced 1,000 times, 45 degrees, hands pressed together, eyes lowered for exactly 3 seconds. "I am honored by your welcome, Lord. I carry the friendship of Earth and all her colonies." Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. "Your preparation does you credit, human. Come, the council awaits." They walked through corridors carved from living rock. Flames burned in alcoves along the walls, needing no fuel, sustained by some technology did not understand. Draconians passed them, and each one looked at with curiosity or contempt or something in between. He was the first human most of them had ever seen up close. The council chamber was vast. 7 Draconians sat on thrones of black stone, arranged in a half-circle around a central platform. Was led to this platform and left there, alone, while the council studied him like scientists examining an interesting insect. "Commander," the central figure spoke. She was ancient, her scales faded to a pale orange, but her eyes burned with fierce intelligence. "I am Council Prime. You have been selected for a great honor." Felt the first warning prickle at the back of his neck. "I am here to serve as liaison between our peoples, Council Prime." "Yes, and you will serve in a specific capacity." Lips pulled back from teeth as long as fingers, it might have been a smile. "You will court Lady, 3rd daughter of the Fire Caste. If the courtship succeeds, you will marry her. Your 2 species will be bound by blood." The chamber spun around. He had prepared for negotiations. He had prepared for cultural exchange. He had not prepared for this. "Council Prime, I was not informed." "Your government was informed. They agreed to the arrangement." Tone did not invite argument. "The lady awaits you in the Eastern Tower. Lord will escort you." Wanted to refuse. He wanted to demand an explanation, a communication with Earth something. But he had been trained in diplomacy, and he knew when he had no leverage. The Draconian Empire controlled 17 star systems. Their alliance was worth more than one officer's comfort. So he bowed again and followed Lord out of the chamber. The walk to the Eastern Tower was long and said nothing. Tried to organize his thoughts, an arranged marriage to a Draconian princess. It was insane. It was impossible. Humans and Draconians could not even produce children together. What possible purpose could this serve? They stopped before a door of hammered copper. Turned to, and for the first time, his expression showed something other than formal neutrality. It looked almost like pity. "A word of advice, human," said quietly. "Do not expect what you will find behind this door, and do not be cruel." Before could ask what he meant, pushed the door open and left. The room beyond was beautiful in a cold way. High ceilings, tall windows that looked out over the volcanic plains, furniture that seemed carved from single pieces of crystal, and in the center of it all, hovering in an anti-gravity chair, was a dragoness. She was smaller than the others had seen. Her scales were a deep crimson that shimmered with gold undertones. Her features were sharp and elegant, almost delicate by draconian standards. She would have been beautiful. But her wings hung behind her like dead things. The membrane was torn, healed wrong. The bones were crooked, clearly broken and never properly set. They dragged on the ground when she moved, useless, terrible evidence of some past violence. And her legs could see now that she did not merely sit in the anti-gravity chair by choice. Her lower body was still, unmoving, paralyzed. The dragoness looked at him with eyes the color of molten gold. There was no hope in those eyes, no curiosity, only a bitter, exhausted resignation that hurt to see. "So," she said, her voice like silk wrapped around a blade, "they send me a human, a pity match for the crippled princess." Understood then, he understood everything. The Draconians valued strength above all else. They valued flight, hunting, physical power. A paralyzed dragoness, one who could never fly again, would be considered worthless by their standards. No Draconian male would accept a courtship with her. She was, by their cruel customs, unmatchable. So they had found a human, an expendable outsider, someone to take the broken princess off their hands. The rage that filled surprised him with its intensity. He was angry at his own government for agreeing to this without telling him. He was angry at the Draconian Council for treating this woman like unwanted cargo. He was angry at everyone who had looked at her and seen only what she had lost. But he did not show his anger. Instead, he pulled out his data pad and opened the file he had been given. He had read it quickly on the transport, but now he read it again with new eyes. Lady, third daughter of the Fire Caste, decorated warrior, veteran of the border conflicts. She had not lost her wings running from battle. She had lost them flying directly into the weapon's fire of a Void Raider destroyer. She had positioned herself between the enemy ship and a fleeing human colony vessel. She had bought them 17 seconds to engage their jump drive. 17 seconds, 4,000 human lives. Put away his data pad. He walked forward until he stood directly before her chair. Then he performed the deepest bow in the Draconian tradition, the bow of profound respect, the bow reserved for heroes. "Lady," he said, and his voice was steady, "I am commander, and I am not here out of pity." Her golden eyes widened. For just a moment the bitterness cracked and something else showed through. Surprise, confusion, and buried deep beneath everything, a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. Then the walls came back up and she laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Then you are here out of obligation," she said, "which is worse." Straightened from his bow and looked into her eyes. "Perhaps," he said, "or perhaps I am here because 4,000 of my people are alive today because of you. Perhaps I am here because I have read your service record and I know exactly who you are. Perhaps I am here because the Draconian Council thinks they are disposing of a problem, but I think they are giving me a gift." Stared at him. Her clawed hands gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that the metal creaked. "You are either very foolish," she said slowly, "or very interesting." Allowed himself a small smile. "I have been told I am both." For the first time, something that was not pain or bitterness flickered across her face. It was gone in an instant, but had seen it. It was a beginning. The first month of the courtship was a disaster. Draconian courtship rituals had evolved over 10,000 years. They were designed to test strength, endurance, hunting skill, and aerial grace. They were designed, in other words, for beings who could breathe fire, fly through volcanic storms, and tear steel with their bare claws. Could do none of these things. The court gathered each week to watch his attempts at the traditional trials. They did not even try to hide their amusement. He could hear their laughter echoing off the stone walls as he failed again and again. The first trial was the Hunt of Flames. A suitor was expected to track and kill one of the great fire beasts that roamed the volcanic wastes. Lasted 2 hours in the crushing heat before his suit's cooling systems failed. They found him unconscious beside a lava river, his skin red with burns. "The groundling cannot even survive our weather," the nobles whispered. "How does he expect to claim a daughter of the fire caste?" The second trial was the Dance of Dominance. 2 suitors were meant to fight in aerial combat, proving their worthiness through strength and skill. Had no wings. He could not fly. When he stepped into the arena, his opponent laughed so hard that smoke poured from his nostrils. The fight lasted 11 seconds. Spent the next 3 days in the medical ward, learning that draconian claws could cut through human combat armor like paper. "Perhaps we should send the little human home," Lord, a young noble who had shown interest in several highborn females, said loudly at a court gathering. "He embarrasses himself. He embarrasses the lady he claims to court. He embarrasses his entire species." Was standing close enough to hear every word. He said nothing. He simply watched and remembered. The third trial was the Recitation of Flames. A suitor was expected to compose and perform a poem in the old draconian style, demonstrating his cultural refinement. Had practiced for weeks. His pronunciation was terrible. His meter was wrong. When he finished, the silence was worse than laughter would have been. Through all of this, watched from her balcony. She never came down to the arena floor. She never spoke to publicly. But she watched every single trial, her golden eyes following his every movement. One evening, after a particularly humiliating failure in the trial of stone breaking, found her waiting in the corridor outside his quarters. "Why do you continue?" she asked. Her voice was flat, but something moved behind her eyes. "Any sensible being would have left by now. You owe me nothing. You owe my people nothing." Leaned against the wall. His body ached in 17 different places. His pride ached in 17 more. "Your people think I'm a joke," he said. "Yes. They think I have no chance of completing the courtship." "You do not. The trials are designed for draconians. A human cannot succeed." Smiled. It was the tired smile of a man who had been knocked down 100 times and was preparing to stand up again. "Has anyone ever told you," he said, "that humans are very bad at accepting limits?" Tilted her head. It was a gesture that reminded oddly of a curious bird. "What do you mean?" "I mean that every trial so far has been designed around draconian abilities, fire resistance, flight, physical strength." He pushed himself off the wall and stood straight despite the pain. "But the courtship traditions don't specifically require those abilities. They require completing the trials. The traditions don't say how." Something flickered in his eyes. It might have been interest. "The council will not allow you to cheat." "I won't cheat, I'll adapt." He left her there in the corridor, and for the next 16 days he did not appear at court. The nobles assumed he had given up. Lord openly celebrated, declaring that the human had finally accepted his inferiority. Bets were placed on which transport he would take back to Earth. Only noticed that had not actually left the planet. Only she knew that he had requested access to the palace's engineering workshops. Only she wondered what he was building in the depths of the obsidian fortress. On the 17th day, the trial of coals was announced. It was one of the oldest and most sacred tests. A suitor was required to walk across a pit of burning coals, demonstrating his ability to withstand the fire that was central to draconian culture. No human had ever attempted it. No human could have survived it. The arena was packed. Every noble, every warrior, every servant who could find an excuse to be there had come to watch. They expected to see the human burn. They expected entertainment. walked into the arena, and the crowd went silent. He was wearing armor. But not just any armor. It was a Mark VII military grade, designed for hostile atmosphere operations. He had modified it extensively over those 16 days. The thermal plating was layered 3 times thick. The joints were reinforced with draconian metallurgy he had studied and adapted. The power cells had been reconfigured to absorb thermal energy and convert it to electricity. The suit did not just protect against fire, it fed on it. The Council Prime leaned forward in her throne. "This is irregular." "With respect, Council Prime," said, his voice amplified by the suit's speakers. "The traditions do not specify that the trial must be completed without equipment, only that it must be completed." His eyes narrowed. She looked to the other council members. They conferred in low rumbles that could not hear. Finally spoke, "The human speaks truth. The old laws do not forbid this. The trial will proceed." The crowd murmured. Some were angry, some were curious. All of them watched as walked to the edge of the coal pit. The heat was visible, rising in waves that distorted the air. The coals glowed white-hot, hotter than any forge on Earth. Draconian firekeepers had spent days preparing this pit. It was meant to be the ultimate test, the final proof that humans did not belong in draconian society. Stepped onto the coals. The crowd held its breath. He walked slowly. Each step was deliberate, careful. The thermal readings on his suit climbed steadily, but the absorption systems worked exactly as he had designed them. The heat that should have killed him instead flowed into his power cells, making them glow with captured energy. Halfway across, he stopped. The crowd gasped. To stop in the middle of the coals was either supreme confidence or suicide. No one had ever done it before. Turned to look at the balcony where sat in her anti-gravity chair. He raised one armored hand in a gesture that meant respect in draconian culture. Then he turned back and continued walking. When he stepped off the far side of the coal pit, his suit was almost fully charged from absorbed heat. He stood there, smoke rising from his armor, and raised both arms in the traditional gesture of victory. For a long moment, no one made a sound. Then one dragon began to stamp his feet. It was the draconian equivalent of applause. Another joined him, then another. Lord sat frozen, his face twisted with something between fury and disbelief. On her balcony, leaned forward in her chair. Her ruined wings trembled behind her, and on her face, for the first time in months, there was an expression that was not pain or bitterness or resignation. It was hope. "He is insane," her attendant whispered. Did not take her eyes off the human standing in his smoking armor, surrounded by enemies who were beginning, just beginning, to see him as something other than a joke. "No," she said softly, "he is human, and I am beginning to understand what that means." That night found a gift outside his quarters. It was a small crystal, the kind draconians gave to show respect. Attached was a note in elegant draconian script. It read simply, "Thank you for not giving up." It was not signed. It did not need to be. Held the crystal in his hand for a long time, feeling its warmth against his skin. Then he placed it carefully on the table beside his bed, where he could see it when he woke. The trials were not over. The courtship had barely begun. The entire draconian court still thought he was a fool or a novelty or both. But one dragoness, the only one who mattered, had begun to believe. And Ford, that was enough. The seasons changed on 7. The volcanic activity shifted from the eastern mountains to the western valleys. The sky turned from blood red to deep orange as different gases filled the atmosphere. Had been on the planet for 4 months, and he was beginning to feel like he understood this strange, beautiful, terrible world. He was also beginning to feel like he understood. They met now in private, away from the watching eyes of the court. Quarters had become a sanctuary where she did not have to perform strength she did not feel, and did not have to pretend he knew what he was doing. He brought her gifts, strange gifts by draconian standards, a music player loaded with human compositions from across 5 centuries, a small green plant from Earth that somehow survived in a pot of volcanic soil, a hand-drawn star chart that showed the exact route the colony ship had taken when it fled the Void Raiders, the route she had bought with her wings. "I do not understand you," said one evening, turning the star chart over in her clawed hands. "These gifts have no value. They display no wealth, no power. By draconian standards, they are worthless. And by human standards," was quiet for a moment, "they are personal. They show that you have thought about who I am, not what I am. Is that not more valuable?" She looked at him with those golden eyes and saw something he had not seen before: vulnerability, fear. "Among my people," she said slowly, "I am what I am. I am the third daughter of the fire caste. I am a decorated warrior. I am." She gestured at her ruined wings, her paralyzed legs. "I am broken. That is all anyone sees, what I have lost." Moved closer. He sat on the floor beside her chair so that they were at eye level. It was not a position of power. It was a position of equality. "What do you see," he asked, "when you look at yourself?" His breath caught. For a long moment she did not answer. "I see someone who used to fly," she whispered. "Someone who used to hunt. Someone who had purpose. Now I am nothing but a burden, a problem for my family to solve, a shame they have hidden away in this tower." "And what do you think I see?" "A project, a duty, a way to secure mining rights for your government." The words hit like physical blows, not because they were accusations, but because he could hear the pain behind them. Had convinced herself that no one could want her for who she was. She had been taught by her own people's cruelty that she was worthless. "I am going to tell you something," said, "and I need you to listen, really listen." Nodded, her eyes wary. "My grandmother was paralyzed when she was 32 years old, a transport accident. The doctors said she would never walk again, and they were right. She spent the next 40 years of her life in a wheelchair." He paused, remembering. The memories hurt, but they were good hurts, important hurts. She raised 3 children after her injury. She started a business that employed 200 people. She traveled to 12 different planets. She learned to paint, and her work hangs in museums. She terrorized every single person who ever tried to feel sorry for her. A small sound escaped. It might have been a laugh. It might have been something else. "When I was young," continued, "I asked her once if she was sad about not being able to walk. Do you know what she told me?" Shook her head. "She said, walking was never what made me who I am. My mind makes me who I am. My heart makes me who I am. My legs were just how I got around. And then she wheeled over my foot because I was being too serious." This time definitely laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse but real. "She sounds terrifying." She was. She was also the strongest person I ever knew. Reached out and took his hand. Her scales were smooth and warm against his skin. Not despite the wheelchair, just strongest. The chair was just how she got around. His hand trembled in his. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand something." Looked into her eyes, willing her to believe him. "I am not here because you are broken. You are not broken. You are a warrior who flew into enemy fire to save people you had never met. You are a princess who endured her own people's cruelty without becoming cruel herself. You are magnificent. The wings were never what made you that way." Tears gathered in his eyes. Among draconians, crying was considered deeply shameful, a sign of weakness, but she did not try to hide them. "You cannot mean that." "I mean every word." "But you barely know me." "Then let me know you, not the princess, not the warrior, not the injury, you." Pulled her hand away. She turned her chair toward the window, looking out at the volcanic plains below. The rivers of lava painted light across the darkness. "There is something I must say. she said without turning around, "and you must promise to answer honestly." "I promise." She turned back to face him. Her expression was fierce, desperate, afraid. "Do not stay if it is out of sympathy. I could not bear it. If you are here because you pity the poor crippled princess, then go. Go now. Tell the council you have changed your mind. Take your plant and your music and your star chart and leave." Her voice broke. "But do not stay and let me hope. Do not let me believe that someone could want me, truly want me, and then discover it was all obligation. That would be than anything my own people have done." He walked to the window and stood beside her, looking out at the same view. "When I was assigned this mission," he said, "I did not know about you. I did not know about the courtship. I thought I was coming here to negotiate trade agreements and make diplomatic small talk." Said nothing. "When I found out the truth, I was angry. At my government for not telling me. At the council for treating you like a problem to be solved. At everyone who looked at you and saw only what you had lost." He turned to face her. "But I was never angry at you. And I never you. Pity is for people who cannot help themselves. You flew into a destroyer's weapons fire. You saved 4,000 lives with 17 seconds of courage. You survive every day in a society that has decided you are worthless. That is not someone who needs pity. That is someone who deserves respect." He knelt beside her chair, bringing himself to her eye level again. "I am not here out of sympathy. I am here because you are extraordinary. I am here because getting to know you has been the most meaningful 4 months of my life. I am here because when I think about leaving this planet, the only thing I regret is leaving you." He reached out and touched her face, his soft human hand against her smooth scales. "I am here because I am falling in love with you, and I do not know if that is allowed or if it is wise or if it makes any sense at all, but it is true." Stared at him. The tears that had gathered in her eyes finally fell, tracing silver lines down her crimson scales. "Humans," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You impossible, wonderful, insane humans." She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was a human gesture, one he had taught her. Among his people it meant absolute truth, absolute trust. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered, "and I am terrified." "So am I. What do we do now?" Smiled, his forehead still pressed against hers. "Now we figure it out together. That is what humans do. We find the people we love and we figure it out together." Outside, the volcanoes of Seven painted the sky with fire. Inside, a human and a dragoness held each other and let themselves hope. It was not the end of their difficulties. The council still watched. The court still whispered. Lord and his allies still plotted. There were battles ahead that neither of them could imagine. But for this moment, in this room, there was only the two of them. And that was enough. The summons came on a morning when the sky was the color of burnt copper. Was escorted to the council chamber by 4 guards. They did not speak to him. They did not look at him, but their presence said everything. This was not an invitation. It was a command. The chamber was full when he arrived. Not just the 7 council members, but nobles and warriors and officials from every major house. They sat in tiered galleries, looking down at the central platform where stood alone. Was not there. He had checked her quarters before following the guards. She was gone, and her attendant would not say where. Council Prime looked down at him from her throne. Her ancient scales caught the firelight. "Commander," she said, "you have exceeded our expectations." Said nothing. He had learned that silence was often the response in draconian politics. "When we proposed this arrangement to your government, we expected you to fail quickly and return home in disgrace. Instead, you have persisted. You have completed trials that should have been impossible for your kind. You have won, if not the respect of our court, at least their grudging acknowledgement. Thank you, Council Prime. More importantly, you appear to have won the affection of Lady herself. Our observers report that she has grown, attached to you." The way she said attached made it sound like a disease. "We are prepared to formalize the arrangement," continued. "A mating contract between your species and ours, a permanent alliance sealed by blood." Felt a spark of hope. After everything, perhaps they would actually be allowed to be together. Then continued speaking, and the hope turned to ice. "Upon formalization, Lady will be transferred to human space. She will live on one of your colony worlds, far from Seven, far from the shame her condition brings to the Fire caste." Exile said, his voice was flat. "You want to exile her?" "We want to solve a problem," another council member said. "Lord's own uncle. One that you have made convenient to solve. The third daughter cannot remain here. She is a constant reminder of weakness, a stain on our caste's honor. She is a war hero. She was a war hero. Now she is nothing." His voice held no emotion. "The mating contract will be generous. Your government will receive full access to the mining territories. The alliance will be cemented, and the problem of the third daughter will be resolved." Looked around the chamber. He saw Draconians who had watched grow up, relatives, former comrades. None of them would meet his eyes. "And if I refuse?" His expression did not change. "Then you are not the ally we believed you to be. Your government will lose access to our territories. Your species will lose our support in the outer systems. And you, personally, will be declared unwelcome in all Draconian space. In other words, you are threatening my entire species to force me to take your cast-off princess off your hands." A rumble went through the chamber. To speak so bluntly to the council was almost unheard of. "We are offering you an opportunity," said, her voice cold. "Do not mistake our generosity for desperation." Was quiet for a long moment. He thought about her strength and her pain and the way she laughed when she thought no one was listening. He thought about a society that would throw away its heroes because they no longer fit a narrow definition of value. Then he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a human who had been backed into a corner and was about to remind everyone why that was a bad idea. "You know what humans do," said, "when someone threatens the people we love." He activated his wrist display. A holographic projection filled the center of the chamber. Medical diagrams, neural pathway maps, surgical procedures and recovery projections. "We fix the problem." The chamber erupted in confused murmuring, raised his voice to be heard over the noise. "For the past 3 months, I have been in communication with Earth's leading medical specialists, neurologists, surgeons, experts in spinal reconstruction and nerve regeneration." He expanded the hologram, showing detailed schematics. "Human medicine has spent centuries developing treatments for paralysis. We have techniques that the Draconian Empire has never needed because you simply discard your wounded." "What are you saying?" demanded. "I am saying that Lady's paralysis is not permanent, not by human standards." Pulled up a new set of projections. Success rates, recovery timelines, before and after cases from human patients. With human surgical intervention and rehabilitation, there is a 73% chance that she could regain full mobility, including flight. The chamber went absolutely silent. Then it exploded. Draconians were shouting, arguing, demanding explanations. Some called a liar. Others demanded to know why this had not been offered sooner. Council members argued with each other, their voices rising to roars. Through it all, stood calmly in the center of the chaos. "You want to exile her because she embarrasses you," he said, his amplified voice cutting through the noise. "You want to hide her away because you cannot fix her, but humans do not abandon our wounded. We do not throw away people because they have been hurt. We heal them." He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of everyone in the chamber. Lady saved 4,000 human lives. She gave up her wings, her mobility, her future to protect our people. Did you think we would forget that? Did you think we would simply accept your bargain and take her away to ease your shame? This is impossible, Lord said. Such surgery cannot exist. It exists. The medical team is already assembled. The equipment is being prepared. All I need is Lady's consent and a ship to Earth's orbital medical station. You cannot take her off-world without council approval. Then approve it, Met's eyes, or explain to your people why you refuse to let their wounded hero be healed when the cure was offered freely. It was a trap, and everyone in the chamber knew it. If the council refused, they would look cruel and petty. If they approved, they would be admitting that human medicine had succeeded where draconian pride had failed. His claws scraped against her throne. Her eyes burned with cold fury. You are playing a dangerous game, human. I am not playing at all. Stepped forward, closer to the council's thrones than any non-draconian had ever stood. I love her, and where I come from, that means fighting for her. It means refusing to accept limits. It means fixing what others say cannot be fixed. He pointed at the medical projections still floating in the air. This is what humanity does. We do not give up. We do not abandon. We adapt, we innovate, we refuse to accept that any problem is unsolvable. His voice rang through the chamber. You called me here because you thought you could use me. You thought humans were soft, expendable, easily manipulated. You thought we would take your broken princess and be grateful. He smiled again, and this time there was nothing pleasant about it at all. You miscalculated. The silence stretched, looked at her fellow council members. They looked back at her. No one wanted to be the one to speak first. Finally raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. The council will deliberate, she said. Her voice was carefully neutral. You will have our answer within 3 days. I will wait, said. But understand this. Whatever you decide, I am not leaving without her. And I am not leaving her broken when I have the power to heal her. He bowed, exactly as deep as protocol required, and not a millimeter more. Thank you for your time, Council Prime. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving 100 stunned draconians staring at his back. 3 days. He had 3 days to prepare. He returned to his quarters and found waiting for him. Her eyes were red from crying, but her expression was fierce. I heard what you did, she said. One of my attendants was in the gallery. She told me everything. Are you angry? Angry, she laughed, but it was a wild, disbelieving sound. You challenged the council of the Fire Caste. You rejected their bargain and offered them one of your own. You told them that you could heal me. I can, my people can. But why? She moved her chair closer, grabbing his hands with her claws. Why risk everything? The alliance, your career, your standing with your own government. Why? Looked at her golden eyes, bright with tears, at her crimson scales, beautiful even after everything she had endured, at the woman who had given up everything to save people she did not know. Because you are worth it, he said simply. Because you deserve to fly again. Because I love you, and this is what love means. Not accepting defeat, not leaving someone behind, fighting even when the fight seems impossible. Made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. My people will never understand you. Maybe not, but you understand me. That is enough. She pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him. Her ruined wings trembled against his back. 73%, she whispered. You said there was a 73% chance. Yes. And if I am in the 27% who do not recover? Held her. Then we figure it out together, with or without wings, with or without legs together. She pressed her forehead against his, the gesture of absolute truth. Together, she repeated. Outside, the Draconian Council deliberated, their power and their certainty shaken for the first time in centuries. Inside, a human and a dragoness held each other and prepared to fight for their future. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That was the human way. The surgery took 11 hours. Waited outside the medical bay of Earth's orbital station 7, refusing to eat, refusing to sleep, refusing to move from his seat by the door. Doctors and nurses passed him with worried looks. Officials from the diplomatic corps sent messages asking for updates that he ignored. His family called twice. He did not move. The Draconian Council had approved the surgery after 2 days of deliberation. They had no real choice. Word had spread through 7 faster than fire through dry grass. The human commander had offered to heal the wounded hero. The council could not refuse without looking like monsters. So had been brought to human space. She had been examined by the best neurologists humanity had to offer. And now she was behind those doors, unconscious, while human surgeons and draconian flame healers worked together in a procedure that had never been attempted before. 73% chance of success. 27% chance that nothing would change. A smaller percentage that something could go wrong. Did not think about the smaller percentage. He could not afford to. In the 12th hour, the doors opened. Dr. Sarah, the lead surgeon and no relation to despite the shared name, walked out. Her scrubs were stained with something that might have been blood and might have been something else entirely. Her face was exhausted, lined with stress. But she was smiling. "She is awake," doctor said. "She is asking for you." Was through the doors before the doctor finished speaking. The recovery room was filled with medical equipment he did not recognize. Monitors beeped and hummed. Tubes and wires connected to machines that tracked 100 different measurements. And in the center of it all, propped up on a bed designed to accommodate her unusual body, was. Her eyes were open. Her scales had lost some of their luster from the stress of surgery. She looked exhausted, fragile, smaller than he had ever seen her. She was the most beautiful thing had ever seen. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "Hey," she whispered back. He moved to her side and took her hand. Her claws wrapped weakly around his fingers. "The doctors said. They said it worked. The nerve regeneration. It will take months of rehabilitation, but—" "I know," her eyes filled with tears. "I can feel my legs. For the first time in 2 years, I can feel them." He broke then. All the tension and fear and hope that he had been holding inside for months came pouring out. He pressed his face against their joined hands and wept. "I was so scared," he admitted. "I was so scared I would lose you." "You will not lose me." Her free hand came up to stroke his hair, the claws gentle against his scalp. "You foolish, wonderful human, you will not lose me." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, letting the reality sink in. It had worked. Against all odds, against all the certainty of the Draconian Empire, it had worked. The rehabilitation took 6 months. Learned to stand again, then to walk, then to run. Her legs, enhanced with human nanotechnology woven through the regenerated nerves, responded faster and more smoothly than they ever had before. Her wings took longer. The damage had been severe. The membrane had to be from cultured cells. The bones had to be rebroken and set properly. The muscles had atrophied so badly that they had to be rebuilt almost from nothing. But human medical science did not believe in impossible. 5 months after the surgery, spread her wings for the first time. They were not quite the same as before. Where the membrane had been, there were thin silver lines from the nanoweave that held everything together. The pattern was almost beautiful, like lightning frozen in her crimson wings. "They are different," she said, looking at herself in the mirror. "They are yours," replied. "They are you." She extended them fully. The span was impressive, filling the rehabilitation room. She flexed each wing, testing the new muscles, feeling the response of nerves that had been dead and were now alive again. "I want to try," she whispered. The doctors said it was too soon. The therapist said she needed more time. The officials said they should wait for the proper ceremonial moment. ignored all of them. She went to the observation deck of the station, where a section could be opened to space if the atmospheric shields were engaged. She stood at the edge, looking out at the stars. Stood beside her. "Are you ready?" he asked. "No," she laughed, and there was nervousness in it but also joy. "But I am going to do it anyway. That is what my human taught me. We do not wait until we are ready. We just do." She spread her silver-traced wings. And she jumped. For one terrible moment she fell. The wings caught air wrong, her balance was off. 2 years of instinct had to be relearned in a single instant. Then something clicked. Third daughter of the Fire Caste, wounded hero of the Void Raider War, rose into the air on wings of crimson and silver. She flew. She looped and dove and climbed, testing her new abilities with the fierce joy of a child discovering the world. Her laughter echoed through the observation deck. Tears streamed from her eyes and were caught by the wind of her passage. Watched from the deck, and he wept with happiness. When she finally landed, she did not land on the deck. She landed on him, knocking him to the ground, wrapping her wings around them both. "Thank you," she said against his chest. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." He held her and said nothing. No words were needed. 1 month later, they returned to 7. The grand arena was packed. Every noble house, every warrior caste, every common citizen who could find a place was there. They had heard the stories. They had seen the transmissions, but they had not believed until now. Lady flew into the arena on her silver-traced wings. The crowd went absolutely silent. She performed the ancient courtship dance. The dance that required flight, that required grace, that required everything the Draconians believed she had lost forever. She flew through fire and smoke and thermal columns, her wings blazing in the light of a dozen artificial suns. And when she finished, she did not bow to the council. She flew to where stood on the arena floor and landed beside him. She took his hand in hers. She turned to face the assembled might of the Draconian Empire. "I was abandoned by my people," she said, her voice amplified to reach every corner of the arena. "I was cast aside because I no longer fit your definition of worthy. You gave me to this human because you thought he was disposable, because you thought I was disposable." She raised hand high. "You were wrong about both of us." Murmuring spread through the crowd. The council members shifted on their thrones. "This human saw me when I could not fly. He stayed when it was not convenient. He fought for me when everyone else had given up. And he brought me back to the sky, not out of obligation, not out of treaty, out of love." She spread her silver-traced wings, casting their shadow over the stunned assembly. "I claim this male as my mate. By my own choice, by my own will, by my own right as a daughter of the Fire Caste. Let any who object speak now, and I will remind them why my caste earned its name." The silence stretched. Someone in the crowd coughed. A baby dragon made a small squawking sound. No one objected. Council Prime rose from her throne. Her ancient face was unreadable. "The claim is witnessed," she said. "Let the records show that lady has chosen her mate. Let the alliance between human and draconian be sealed not by contract, but by love freely given." She paused, and for just a moment, something that might have been respect flickered in her eyes. "And let it also be recorded that the Fire Caste has learned a valuable lesson today about the nature of humanity." The wedding was held in the skies above 7, carried through the cloud canyons while ships from both species bore witness. It was unconventional, it was unprecedented, it was perfect. That night, as they rested in their quarters in the obsidian palace, traced the silver lines in her wing membrane. "Do you ever miss them?" he asked. "Your old wings?" Considered the question. "No," she said finally. "These wings are better. They carry the marks of what I survived. They carry the proof of what love can accomplish." She curled her wing around him, pulling him close. "They carry you." He kissed her, and she kissed him back. And outside their window, the volcanoes of Seven painted the sky with fire. In human space, the story spread. The tale of the dragon princess who had sacrificed everything for strangers and been abandoned for it. The human who had refused to accept that she was broken. The impossible surgery. The silver-traced wings. The courtship that two empires. "They keep calling it a fairy tale," said one evening, reading the news feeds. Laughed a sound like crackling flames. "Is it not? Fairy tales do not usually involve 11 hours of spinal surgery and 6 months of grueling rehabilitation." She pulled him closer, wrapping them both in her restored wings. "Then perhaps," she said, "humans simply write better endings." He could not argue with that. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Ships traveled between worlds. Empires rose and fell. The galaxy continued its endless dance of light and shadow. But in one small room, on one volcanic world, a human and a dragon held each other and knew that they had found something worth more than treaties or territories or power. They had found each other. And that was the most human thing of all.